Sam, my wife, who like technically she would want, if she was here, she'd want to make it clear that she's the big boss. She runs the show.
Thank you for being a pal.
What's up, pals? Welcome back to Pen Tool Pals, a friendly graphic design podcast between two graphic designers. My name is Canvas Cam from Canvas Design Company.
And I'm Cole from Cole Design. Cam, you got a little swag on that intro. That was pretty nice.
I'm influenced by John Bannon Design.
Oh, I miss John.
Monday, motivation, inspiration, baby.
I miss John. I miss Corey. I miss all of the early pals that came on the episode.
Me too, man.
We'll have
awesome. Once we get past episode 20, we'll have to go back in the archive and get some reoccurring guests.
Yeah, absolutely. But
dude, John has been posting some fire lately, though. He is like not just his own artwork, but some of the inspiration that he's posting. I'm just like, these people are insane.
John's crushing it. I mean,
yeah,
Ken, we've just had such great artists every week. Been super stoked to chat with all of them. But I mean, who do we have on this week?
Yo, Cole, this week we have Bosssdog. If you're not familiar with Bosssdog, it's a two-man out operation. Mikey, his wife Sam, they kill it in the art game. You can find all their stuff in Zumiez. They work with Liquid Death amongst a bunch of other brands. Super stoked to have Mikey on the podcast today and kind of dive into his world, his art journey, if you will.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I've been checking out Mikey and Sam's work, and they have such a unique style. He spends ridiculous amounts of time stippling and making all of his work just super unique, and his style is just like authentic from the bone.
Yeah, and I'm geeking out today because I'm wearing his work, Liquid Death t-shirt. I'm gonna mark out, nerd.
Well, I'm super stoked to chat with him, and we'll get him in the chat.
Yeah. All right, Mikey. Hey, how you doing, man?
Hey, good. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Happy to have you on, man. Been a big fan of your work for a number of years, and it's been super cool to kind of see how far of a scope that you've gotten in the last few years. But yeah, man, it's super good having you on.
Thanks. I appreciate that.
Where are you located out of, Mikey?
My wife Sam and I live in 29 Palms, California, which is like basically the high desert. We live literally on the border of Joshua Tree Park, right outside the town of Joshua Tree.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so right now it's like the worst time ever to be here. It's like the death of summer. It's like 111 degrees out, and it's just brutal. It's gnarly. Yeah. But like the secret is that literally like 7 months out of the year, it's like 75 degrees here and gorgeous. So no one ever mentions that. I probably shouldn't be saying it myself, but it's really nice here, but the summers are just terrible.
Yeah, I feel a lot of my friends like to go up to Joshua Tree, not around now, but I live in Bakersfield, so I have the same problem. It's hot.
You know what's up.
Yeah, I know what's up.
But the art culture out there in Joshua Tree is insane. I mean, I went out there and everyone's just like so free willy, and creativity's flowing throughout every year.
Yeah, and man, like I mean, Joshua Tree is not really this way right now, and Yucca Valley is like another town that's like really busy. But I will say this: there's parts of up here that's like really cheap to live and to be a working artist designer. It's kind of like why Sam and I chose this, because it's the cost of living is really low out here, and like honestly there's not a lot to do, which helps a lot. Like Sam and I love to go out to eat and like do social things, and like there's just not a lot of restaurants, or there's fucking nothing to do, so we're always keeping busy with work because there's nothing else we can do.
That's good.
Down are always no distractions and put yourself into that scenario. That's awesome.
Bakersfield's kind of like that too. There's not really much to do here, and really the only thing to do is go to the bar and go to restaurants. Like there is a small creative community here, but it's not like graphic design and stuff like that. It's just primarily people doing arts and crafts and painting and stuff like that. But
Yeah. I know that there's a lot of artists in the high desert, I mean, obviously you see it, but it's like everyone that we know is like doing the same thing as us, which is like running, like doing their art or their crafts or their design out of their house and then running their web stores and then barely going out,
yeah,
So it's like we'll see people like once every 3 weeks or 6 weeks, and like, but there's not like a social community. Like there's no bar scene out here because it's just like it's the desert,
yeah,
Like there's like pioneer towns, like really touristy, and there's a couple like social places, but it's not like at night you're like, oh, what are we doing? We're going, like it's just like they call it desert midnight because at 6 p.m. you literally feel like it's midnight. Like there's no lights in the sky, there's no
Wow.
traffic, it just feels dead. So you just end up kind of like being a homebody,
yeah. I mean,
Did you guys move
for
out
me,
there?
that sounds amazing. I am a homebody, so
Yeah, I mean,
Sorry, go for it.
oh no, I was gonna say, like, I mean, honestly, Sam and I are for the most part too. Like, we always joked, like, we started socially isolating like way before quarantine because pretty much moving out to the desert, it's like that's what you're doing. Like, you're
yeah.
just
So did you both move out there with the intention of starting your guys's art?
We did, yeah. We were living in Portland, Oregon, and it had become like Portland's just blowing up right now, and it's kind of struggling with probably what San Francisco went through in the 90s. Like
Yeah.
it's just uncontained growth from ironically a lot of people from San Francisco,
Mhm.
but it just became a city that I didn't like, and we kind of talked about it, and we didn't want to be those kinds of people that complained about Portland while we lived there.
Yeah.
So we just felt like it was just like we felt obligated to move so that we could talk trash on Portland. But,
There you go.
I love Portland, but it definitely is. The heyday for us was like, was when it was a little bit more affordable. It's just going through a period where it's like I was getting road rage all the time. It used to take like 15 minutes to get anywhere, and now it takes like an hour to go like a mile.
shit.
And that's it. And it's like city problems. It's just
Yeah.
going from like a small town to a big city.
Mhm.
And it's great. I just didn't want to be there to live through it because it was just getting annoying. So
I don't blame
and
you.
then we wanted to move to Southern California, and it's like when you look at the real estate for us, we were like, well, we don't want to be in LA, and we're just like, we didn't know. Like we looked at the coast, and it was like, I don't know, that seems a little too hectic. And then we were like, oh, the high desert. Like I have a friend that moved out to Joshua Tree like 7 years ago, and we always would visit him, and so we would come out here and we looked at houses and stuff. And we were like, oh, it's really doable. And at first, like people think you're crazy, but I was like, I wanted to be in between Vegas and LA because of just what I do for a living, and thinking like I always want to be around the convention scene and like, some of like the big, like kind of just, all the makers kind of like stuff that happens in San Diego and LA and Vegas. So it kind of just made sense for us. And we were like,
Yeah.
fuck it, let's do it,
Yeah, seriously. That's awesome, man. I'm going up to Portland at the end of this month for a wedding. Never been. But it's
Oh,
like,
yeah?
you hear all of these good things about Portland, and then it's like then you're gonna go to Portland. And everybody's going, don't go downtown. It's become a shit show down there. I was like, I thought the downtown area was gonna be super fun. They're like, no, you'll get stabbed. I'm like, what? Like, never heard that before in my life.
Well, first of all, the thing is like, if you go in August, you're going to go and you're going to fall in love with it because Portland it's beautiful in the summer for about 4.5 weeks tops. And like
Okay.
people go there and they're like, dude, Portland's amazing. It's so gorgeous. And I'm like, yeah, just like, it's literally like 34 degrees and driving rain for a solid 6 months, and the sun sets at 4 p.m. So it's like, and like I have a lot of friends that live up there, and I knew I never fit in because like it would be like 85 degrees and sunny, and they would be like, oh, it's so hot.
Yeah.
And like I hate the rain. Like I get seasonally affected by it.
Okay.
And I just knew, I was like, man, I gotta leave. Like I know I'm making so many enemies in Portland right now, but it is a rest. And the thing is like when you leave, you realize like it is a total bubble. Like I mean, it's like it's progressive off the charts, like there's just things you assume up there that when you leave Portland, you're like, oh, okay. Like people don't all agree that this is reality, you know? And so it is this really beautiful kind of thing where it's like people share a lot of like mindsets, and that can create a lot of safe space. But I just got tired of the rain, you know? And
I don't blame you, man.
Was the start of Bosssdog, was that in Oregon or was that in the desert? And how did that all begin with you and Sam?
Well, Bosssdog as a brand started in 2018. But I mean, you know, that's different from like me kind of doing, you know, art and design, I guess. But Bosssdog as a brand started because I just really, I don't know, how should I say it? Like, I'm a pretty calculated risk taker, and so that being said, I had no delusions that I thought Bosssdog was this like 1 in a million kind of thing. I believe in it, and I think that it will, as it continues, it's getting better and better. So I'm not like downplaying it. I'm just pretty realistic. And when I started, I just knew that I was close enough to being good enough that I had to take a chance. And I was so miserable doing other things that I was like, I need to do Bosssdog, you know, like I'd had enough success with it where I'd been approached by Zumiez to do some clothes, and I had been selling some one-off tees and doing some design on my own that was doing well enough for me to say, fuck it, I want to do this full time, you know? But, and I only say that because I do think it's important to like acknowledge that, like, man, it's hard. Like the success rate of brands is not good. Like, you know, I mean, I don't know what the real statistics are out there, but I'm pretty sure it's like 95% failure rate. I mean, it's just, and you see a lot of people there that like, I wish I had that blind confidence or that like kind of like almost arrogance that I see some people have, because I wish I had more of that, because I probably would have taken the risk sooner. But I don't know. I was just always afraid that it would fall on its face, because I'm definitely one of those people where I worry about how to pay the bills. And I'm not saying other people don't, but we had to make sure we could afford to do it. So, you know, in the first year it was definitely touch and go, but it's definitely, you know, I mean, but it's like anything, you know, I think that people kind of see something and there's this perception of success, but you know, capitalism's a real B, and it just like, we have a mortgage to pay every month. So, you know, we may have some perception of success, but if we're not selling as much or equal to or more than what we sold last month, well, you know, it's not like getting a paycheck every month, you know, like we're trying to do things that keep people coming back and keep people buying things. And we're also trying to have integrity, and we're also trying to be original. So the longer you do it, I think the more it can be kind of tricky and difficult, but
totally.
But we love it. I mean, it's great, you know, they're good problems to have.
Oh yeah. You guys have such a unique style, and we can't discredit your wife is the second in command here, or maybe she's first in command, but you guys have a certain style that is so unique and is just, it's undeniably eye-catching. I remember, I can't remember the first design that I saw from you, but I remember seeing it and being like, whoa, like this shit is crazy good, and it's different than really anything any other design style that I've seen. And it's like, it's like no wonder why Zumiez would like pick you guys up and do all that stuff. Do you guys have like what's your arrangement with Zumiez? Like, do they just pay you outright to do a t-shirt design and they make it, or do like you get them printed and you just send them off?
Well, they have different arrangements with different brands, but for the most part, they act as like a wholesaler with most brands, where they will, you know, you just negotiate a wholesale deal like the same way we would, you know, like we carry shirts with like local boutiques. It's the same thing. They negotiate a price that you're going to sell your t-shirts wholesale, and then they buy a certain amount of designs that they like. It's changed a bit with us, where the past year we're kind of on a different, we have a different sort of like our relationships evolved with them, where we have a little bit more security, where we know that we're basically one of their brands that they're going to consistently buy from. And that helps a lot, where we're we're not fighting for shelf space as much as we did at the beginning. Because, you know, they try out a lot of new brands and it's difficult. You're basically fighting for shelf space and that can be like tricky. So luckily this year it's different, but you know, I will say, like, you know, I don't get kickbacks from this, and hopefully they don't fuck me over someday, because I truly do like Zumiez, and I know it's easy to bag on them, but we did work with other retail outlets, and I won't like name their names and like bash them or anything, but Zumiez is actually run by like kids, and what I mean by that is like they hire people that actually know what's going on to kind of be, you know, like a lot of their buyers and stuff, it's like they actually get it, and that helps a lot, because you're not dealing with like this middle wall, you know. So they're like there to see you be successful, and they know what kind of works, you know. So
that's cool.
Yeah,
a lot of those bigger companies like that, you know, they really don't give a shit about, you know, the person, you know, the vendor. You know, they just want a product in their store, and if it's not doing well, all right, kick rocks.
Yeah, I mean, for the most part, yeah. I think it's just you know, especially like the way things are now, where I think like 5 years ago, if you were at a t-shirt brand and you came out, and before social media had kind of like really been established, you had more of like, all right, there were humans behind all these retail outlets that were like, fuck, that brand's cool. Let's rock it. Let's push it. Now it's all like Instagram algorithm, like, you know, like they just kind of throw shit at the wall and see what sticks.
Yeah.
And it's much more difficult to see success. So it's like, if you're starting out now, it's like, it's actually harder to get into big retail, I think. So
yeah, I've been in the retail game. I totally know how that all goes. And I'm still in retail, actually. I'm still doing but on a different scale. It sounds like with Bosssdog, you guys are acting as a brand, right? You guys are doing the designs, you're doing the print, you're selling them on your own e-commerce site, and you're selling those same shirts to Zumiez, or maybe specific exclusives to those brands, or to
pretty much
shops, right? That way you're doing the whole thing. You're getting the whole batch. You're not acting as like just a designer where they're paying you per design and then they get to run off and do everything.
No. Yeah. I mean, that's the thing, is like, I don't really do freelance anymore. I will take on projects that are commission based sometimes if they're just rad, you know, like there's always exceptions, but so that's like the weird thing, is Bosssdog is like based off of essentially like I'm Bosssdog, right? But then Bosssdog became a brand. And so it's really weird. Like I have schizophrenia myself about it. Like I don't even know, like, I'm like, who are we? But it just is like, it's evolved. And I think part of that was like, oh, don't worry. We have 3 dogs. It's totally fine. I think it's evolved too, because like Sam, my wife, who like technically she would want, if she was here, she'd want to make it clear that she's the big boss. So she runs the show. But I mean, a lot of that was like, okay, well, Sam is involved. And so that's why I always say we, and as a company, because I didn't want to become one of those like cult of personality dudes and like have my wife working like 100 hours a week on the brand. And like, oh, I'm Mikey, I'm Bosssdog. So I just felt like it was like, all right, we should be a brand and a company named Bosssdog. And she's so much involved with like the aesthetics and sort of the creative decision making, where I think a lot of where we went artistically, especially at the beginning, was because of her, because I think I probably wouldn't have had the courage to do some of the stuff that we did if I didn't have her like as my partner, instead of like, you know, my wife, who just like thinks what I do is wacky. And she literally gave up she was a massage therapist, and like gave up her job to work on Bosssdog. So it just was like one of those things where it's like we became a company.
That's awesome. First off, to be able to have the dynamic duo of like wife, husband, just crushing it in the art scene, it must be a pretty cool thing. But what's the real partnership? Like, is one of you doing the artwork? Are you guys both doing the artwork? Is there like a creative direction part of it, and then someone is doing the business side?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I will say like too, it's like, Sam and I have been married for like 5 years, and we started Bosssdog like 2.5 years ago. So I would just like to point out that you should not try and get married and start a business at the same time.
Right.
Because it took us like 2.5
That's sound
years.
advice.
Yeah, I mean, like it took us a minute to figure out how to be married. Like not really, but you know, we got married, and it was like, all right, 2 years into it, we're solid, and then we became like business partners, and like, I mean, it was tricky, you know. It was like the first year, especially because like I'm like a horrible communicator in some ways, and
I'm right there with you.
I'm like, well, I'm just in my head a lot, you know. I think like I don't want to speak like generically for a lot of designers and artists, but I think it's like, dude, if I'm staring at a computer screen or drawing all day, and then I interact with Sam, it's like 9 times out of 10 I forgot half the things I should have told her that I needed to do, or you know, or I imagined it, you know.
Yeah.
And then she's just like, you never fucking told me, and I'm like, I swear to God, I told you. And
Oh man,
so,
I know exactly how you feel, because my girlfriend, she's not like a part of Canvas Design Company, but she helps me with a lot. And there's so many times where it's like I'm in the clouds, like I'll imagine that I told her something and she's just yelling. It's like, ah, so I totally get it.
yeah, but yeah, I mean, like when you were asking about it, like I do all the design, but you know, especially the past year and a half, it like starts off with us talking about concepts, and then us working through texts that we like, or like kind of thinking about copy, or thinking about like what we want to, like some themes that we want to hit, and then going from there. And then she's usually involved like every step of the way, and she's an artist herself. Like we used to paint murals together, and like, you know, so she has like an artistic eye, but luckily she doesn't get involved with design because that takes up the most time.
Yeah.
In terms of like projects, like you know, it's like a graphic will take you 60 hours. So, but she ends up doing everything else. Like she does fulfillment and all the admin stuff and everything else related to the business. When, especially in times when it's like, if I'm working on just design stuff, I don't have time to do anything else. So she does everything else.
That's great.
And then I'll pop back in, and we also have a shop in Palm Springs that is like really time consuming. And you know, we have another shop that's opening up in Yucca Valley. So it's just a lot of like inventory and, you know, just tagging and just kind of fulfillment stuff. It goes without saying, she's my best friend. And, you know, I mean, I think that you know, we've started working with other people. Like we have a guy named Jabril is our street team guy. And that's great because we live in the middle of nowhere and we're always busy. And Jabril's really good at like, we can send him out to do kind of like mobile Bosssdog stuff more. And, you know, but for the most part, it's like, you know, we do have, you know, we live together, we work from home. We're both like workaholics, which can be really bad. Like quarantine was like, probably the opposite for a lot of people. Like we just worked. We worked like 14 hours a day. Like there was a stretch in quarantine where it was like 8 months and we took 3 days off. So
damn,
we like went hard during quarantine, and I feel thankful that we were able to do that. But we have problems with like separating, you know. So yeah, we'll just go nonstop if we don't let it, like if we don't stop ourselves, you know.
Yeah. Dude, I feel that because I'll sit behind my desk from like 8 in the morning to 11 o'clock at night. I'll take like shit breaks and, you know, I'll eat lunch and whatnot in that order. But I have to like have my girlfriend drag me away from my desk most of the time because she's like, you know, you just get so into it, and that's a good thing and it's a bad thing because I kind of forget to kind of like have a life and get out of here and all that stuff. I just started going to the gym, so maybe that's my little way to kind of get away from here. But yeah, I think that's just the artist mentality. Once you get past a certain point to where you know you want to take it seriously, like I knew years ago when I was still working, I work in marketing for a supplement company. I worked there for like 4 years, and I knew that I wanted to do this. The design work that I was doing for them didn't quite line up with what I was wanting to do. And I just started, you know, really just giving up every single day, just kind of barreling into it. I knew I needed to set myself up. But then when you get to that point to where you want to do it as a career and you want to take it seriously, you forget that, you know, time it really bears down on your body. You know, I've got to learn to kind of separate myself. My eyes went to crap, you know,
Yeah.
amongst other things, where it's like, you know, I still have to remind myself that I'm a human being, and you know, art is who I am, but it's not, you know, art is what I do. It's not who I am, is what I should say. But yeah.
Right. I hear you. I mean, like, you know, I think it's different for everyone. It's like, like the other day, Sam and I took a day off and we watched, like we just watched movies like all day, and it was amazing. And so I'm all for that. I also think that, like, you know, like the whole idea of like work, it's like, yeah, if you use that as a flex,
Yeah.
it's pretty lame. I mean, that's lame, right? Like we all know that that's like people who do that are like,
Yeah.
it's like, okay, you're just trying really hard, but like there's a difference between that and like if you're obsessed with something, if it's your passion,
Yep.
then sometimes you just do that, you know.
Yep.
Like I don't mean for it to come across like, oh, we work all the time. It's like, no, we're just like upset. Like I'm really obsessive, and I'm one of those like kinds of designers too, where it's like I'm best in between graphics or in between projects. It's like I feel like my mind is free. But when I get an idea, I'm not really happy until it's done.
Yeah.
And sometimes it takes me like 60 hours to do, which could take up to like a week. So I'm kind of just like a fucking pain in the ass to be around until I get it done, you know? Yeah. And yeah, there will be days where I'm pulling like a 14-hour day. And again, it's not like, 'cause I'm trying to get attention for it. I just can't stop, you know?
It's not
like,
that we want to do that. It's not that I want to put my back through that, you know. it's yeah, I totally, dude, obsessive, like, but I think that's how you can become successful in art, because it's a very new thing. Like we've talked about it on here. Art 10 years ago wasn't as mainstream. Graphic design wasn't even as mainstream as it is nowadays. And I think that for art obsessed people like we are, you know, it's always on my brain. You know, I'm always talking about it, you know, and I think you have to be if you want to make it in this world of this huge world of graphic design.
Yeah, I think like graphic design has also just like allowed a whole new mainstream platform to profit from art like we haven't been able to in the past. Like when I first was growing up, my parents were scared shitless that I was gonna be like a gallery artist, right? And they were like, "Oh God, we're gonna support him till the day he dies." I mean, like, that's not happening. But once you find graphic design and figure out that there's actually like so many ways to be used in a business mindset too, and that you can, wow, like I actually could make a living out of this. It kind of just changes that whole thing. I was hearing a little bit of you saying like how your process is that you have like, you know, tons of hours within each design, but I'd love to know exactly how that starts for you. And you know, I would assume it starts with pen and paper or something, like, you know, actually outside of the digital realm, and then maybe throwing it in. Is that similar?
Yeah, for the most part. I mean, but honestly, I'll start with Photoshop, just mapping out text. You know, to be, you know, really truthfully, how a Bosssdog graphic gets done, it's like, it usually is we figure out the text first, and then we figure out the themes behind it. And usually what I'll do is I'll sit and mess with the text first and figure out where I want to put that, and then kind of envision how the graphic would go and how the drawing would look based on that. So I'm staring at like literally a white screen with just the text, because that kind of helps me almost draw specifically to what I want to do, and then kind of work backwards like that.
That's cool.
But yeah, I mean, I think it works differently for everyone. Like, I used to be like a huge fan of Illustrator. I mean, I am an illustrator, right? But like, I used to be a huge fan of like pen and ink illustration, which I technically still do, but I don't do it the way like a lot of like kind of the old school guys, or you see like the black and white pen and ink guys. Well, they'll do this like masterful illustration, or people, you know, I should say, but they'll do this masterful illustration, and you can tell like they basically scanned it in, and then that's your design. And I don't really do that anymore. I render and I'll hand draw what I need to do, and I'll stipple or I'll shade what I need to do. but essentially I just get the shapes figured out, and then I usually do the rest just on the computer,
Yeah.
You
It's
just
a lot more.
you have a crazy, like, you have textures everywhere in your designs and like halftones and all these crazy like
Yeah.
patterns, and I
Thanks.
it makes sense why it takes 60 hours to do
Oh yeah, for sure. When I got this Liquid Death shirt
Yeah, nice.
designed by you, dude, I can't even tell you. I basically was like this to the entire design just because I was breaking down how I think you may have done it. But
That's amazing.
yeah, it's yeah, dude, you have such a great unique style, just full of just craziness everywhere. It's awesome.
Thanks. I'm also like, I always say this, like, because I mean, this is a podcast where supposedly people are listening, trying to glean some sort of wisdom from me, which is, I'm doing the best I can here. But I always say that, like, like my whole analogy is like, I love the Ramones, and I love Emperor, and it's like, you don't have to learn how to do blast beats and play like insane black metal riffs to start a band. You may start a band and really what comes out is just 4/4 punk rock, and it could be fucking awesome. So I for a long time thought I had to be a certain kind of designer to be a designer. I was around designers that were better than me, and I thought I had to be like them, and they were more formally educated and they had more of an art school background, and I thought that I would never be like that. But then it's like you just kind of learn what you do well, and then just kind of go from there, So I think like it's funny because I didn't know what I was doing with fonts or textures or anything 5 years ago, and now like someone just recently was like, oh, your text work is really good, and I'm like, really? Because I still have that. It's like when it's like I still have that person in my head that was like felt like I wasn't good enough around other designers. So now that I'm doing stuff, I'm still thinking like, oh, this is crap. You know what I mean? Like, but so it's weird when people are like, oh, that's really good. I'm like, really?
Yeah.
But it just is. I think it's like you got to start somewhere. It's a cliche, but you just got to start and then figure out what you're good at, and then just focus on that.
Totally.
Like I see so many artists that are like super 2D, and it looks like what they're doing took them 5 minutes, but it didn't. And you know that there's like such a aesthetic to what they're doing. And so everyone has to arrive at what they're doing, and basically figure out like their strong suit, and then just go from there,
Totally.
Nice. It's like two parts. One, consistency, especially when it comes to having like a social media page and having your artwork be consistent, and whether that is some sort of like look or just being like authentically you, that's the best way it seems like people are going to follow, but continue to follow and dive deep and want to continue to see your work. And the first time it scrolls down your page, they know immediately that's a Bosssdog art, right? And then all of a sudden you start changing that up and you try to mold to what you think everyone else wants you to be. Then you start getting pretty lost into all that crap. But I think that you've done that so well. It's just being absolutely like exactly what you want to throw out there.
Thanks. In the world. But I will say, like, the challenge with being a brand and Instagram is that it does value exactly what you said. And like for me, I hit a point pretty quickly on that, like, one, there's only so many Bosssdog shirts someone can buy. Yeah. And two, if they all look like a Bosssdog shirt, like if they're all black with like a skeleton on it, then it's getting harder and harder to kind of keep people coming back. So, and also as a brand, like my favorite brand that I just look up to, not like I didn't grow up wearing it, and it's not like it's what I wear every day, but the brand that I look at that I'm just like, damn, is Obey. And if you look at what Obey does, it's like they're very good at coming up with different, aesthetics and different themes and stuff like that. Yeah. So one of the challenges I have with Bosssdog is like we have been trying to mix it up a lot more so than we did last year. Like last year, you look at our page, it was like black graphic, pinks, oranges, skeleton, and that's my natural go-tos. Yeah. But I've been really trying to stretch myself and do different kinds of things, and do some cartoony stuff, do stuff that's more illustrative, do stuff that's more like old school 60s graphic design. And when you do that, it does create like fuck ups in your algorithm, and you see it. You see your posts get buried. And that's frustrating because I'm trying to create variety in our clothing, but our Instagram kind of suffers from it, which is just an interesting like side. I have no point to that other than like it just
it's actually a good point just in general for people who are trying to grow their following, and like I swear every time you think you're doing something right and you put out that one post that you're just like, oh, people are just gonna be so stoked on this, and it lets you down, and you get not nowhere near, or like maybe half of what you normally get, and you just like scratch your head thinking like, what the fuck is going on?
Yeah, Instagram's a bitch.
But it's good to know that, like, I mean, that's part of Pen Tool Pals, is that it's good to know that other people are going through those same headaches, and like, even some of the best are still trying to figure it out. There was another thing you had said about how like people are commenting that they like your typography and they like your artwork, and you're like, oh wow, like really, you know, it's just also funny to hear, because like, you know, we look up to you, and there's people that look up to me and Cam, and like there's always that evolution. Like it doesn't matter how big you get, I always feel like I'm gonna feel smaller or smaller in general, right? And like and then there's someone below you that's looking up to you, and it's always a cool thing to get that little boost and realize that we are doing something right here.
Totally. And it's also like, you know, it's that thing we all preach against, but it's like, it's an almost human nature to like compare yourself to like who you think are, you know, in your same, whatever it is, like, oh, this designer's been doing it as long as me, or they have as many Instagram followers. And then you're like, well, why do they have fucking, you know, 40% more likes on every post than I get? And like, you know, that's why sometimes I feel like to survive, like I'll go through periods where I just put on blinders and I'll ignore my friends on Instagram. I'll ignore other designers because I'm in it for the long haul, and that shit it can eat your brain alive, you know?
Oh, totally.
And it's like, you know, and what you mentioned a minute ago was like, sometimes you start to, like last year I was doing stuff and I wasn't aware of anything. And then this year I'm doing stuff. And to be honest, I've noticed that there's designers coming up that kind of look like maybe they were a little influenced by like some Bosssdog stuff, and that's great. I'm not saying that in a negative way, but it fucks me up. Like it throws me off, and then I have to kind of like either try and ignore it, or because it's almost like gets me shook, where I'm like, shit, they're doing something better than I did. Like,
dude, that's the worst.
Did I stop doing that? I don't know.
Yeah, you know? Dude. Going back to like comparing yourself, like my worst years as an artist was when I compared myself to Dave Quiggle every day. Like I wanted to be, I wanted my art to look just like Dave Quiggle, and I would, you know, and he's still one of my favorite illustrators. I have a whole wall of his prints, but it was one of those things to where, you know, his social media following intimidated me, his talent intimidated me. And then one day I heard, I forgot exactly who said it, or it was Draplin. I don't know what I'm saying, but Draplin was saying, stop comparing yourselves to the artists that you look up to, and just start focusing on being good at what you do. And it was like from that day, I was just like, well, shit, like what am I really, really good at? I don't know. And then over time, I just started to develop, you know, my own style. Comparison is the biggest killer of art, and the biggest killer of artists. Like I don't want to be stuck in a hole just because like I'm not as good as this next artist over here.
Yeah, well also too, it's like you don't want to become an asshole. You know what I mean? And it's like I see the flip side of that is like, okay, it can either destroy your self-confidence, or it can lead to these egocentric kinds of things, which makes you sound like a fucking asshole. You know, like I've talked to designers, and sometimes when you talk to designers, they want to talk about all this, like this dude's ripping this person off, or this guy's bullshit. And it's like, dude, you sound like an asshole because you can't really decide or judge or figure out what people like, you know? Yeah. And so it's like, there's stuff out there that's technically maybe not like what I was saying. It's like, it's not technically that great, but it's conceptually rad. Like people are going for it, you know? Yeah. Or like people love certain things. And it's like, if you get caught up in like hating on that shit, then it's like, I just feel like the longer you let that happen, you're just going to become a really bitter person. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying I'm, trust me, Sam and I, we'll talk shit, but it's just important to not let that stuff like consume you,
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, I'm sure it's a different level for you, especially with how unique your art is. And, nothing against Zumiez, but once you put it into a retail shop, there are people that go to those stores specifically to seek out artwork that is selling well. And then they will go back to their art department and say, like, here, like Bosssdog is doing really well. Like, please make something with this realm. And that's a real thing that happens in the industry. So, like I don't know how that would mess with my own head if I was literally seeing like similar replicas to my work, like on different artworks. And I don't know what level this happens to you, but I'm sure that this doesn't just happen to you, but it's got to happen to brands all over everywhere.
I mean, like 1000%. Like if there could be like a record scratch overdub, that's that's the hugest thing. And it's like I felt so naive to the fact that like I kind of thought that happened, but it 1000% happens, and it can become it's like it can become maddening if you let it, because like not only what you're talking about, like there's a brand at Zumiez, I'm not going to say who they are, they're fucking ripping us off, and like and I see it, and it's like Zumiez doesn't do anything about it. It's not their job to do anything about it, but they're doing really well. And and one thing I'll say about that is like there's a lot of brands that aren't artist owned or artist driven, and like in this brand I'm talking about, they're not artists, and so they just see something that's doing well and they say, cool, let's hire some artists to do that, and they say do it like Bosssdog. And is that wrong or right? I don't really know. It sucks. It makes me have to keep doing it. It makes me have to try and feel like I have to keep one step ahead. But I also say, like, I know another, like a friend's brand who's like just starting out, and he had a buyer in the industry tell him, not knowing that we were friends, and be like, you should copy stuff that Bosssdog does. It sells really well. Yeah. And then he immediately emails me and is like, you don't believe what this guy says to me. And I'm just saying, I put that stuff out there because people do need to know. It's like, be ready, because emotionally and psychologically, it can really fuck with you. And, it's one of those weird things. Like, it's like, I see all levels of it, and it can be really disheartening. And it's like, Sam and I are just a 2-person business, and we pay for this business with money that is income. And, then you see another business out there, like there's certain brands there, it's like, they've got $1 million investment. They were started with $1 million investment. They've got ongoing investors. They're in like Foot Locker, Urban Outfitters, Zumiez, every retail outlet, because they have that stretch and they have that bandwidth. They have an art team that's like, 8 to 10 people big. And they're coming after us, and they're ripping us off. And then on Instagram, I get someone saying like, you stole that from the brand that I'm talking about. And it's like, no, they fucking ripped us off. And then they have 1 million followers.
We started this, right?
And now we look like we're imitating them. It's so crazy, but
it's crazy that like I there's let me reframe what I was gonna say. I feel like there's a lot of people, big brands stealing stuff, because like Benny Gold, he's going through something right now where a big company stole like a catalog of his designs, and it's like he had his like his following start commenting on this other brand's stuff, because like Benny Gold has his like iconic patch design, and do you know what I'm talking about? He has like,
I saw this on his page.
And so it was so undeniable, and you could tell this brand had like no shame whatsoever with how blatant that they were with copying this design. And I posted something about it. Benny was posting, other people posting about it like crazy, but this brand didn't even reach out or say anything to him. It was just crazy to me. I mean, it's like that shit's got to happen all the time, because these companies who are not artists, they're just hiring designers. They don't give a shit.
Yeah. And whatever threshold that used to exist doesn't exist anymore. Like what I mean is that like there used to be some sort of honor among thieves, I would say. Like, and I've seen that just completely dissipate to the point where it's like back in the day, it's like if the designer, like, you know, a lot of times like we're drawing on like, if you're not coming up with the actual text, you're drawing like old school sayings and you're kind of putting an image to it. And it's like, let's say an artist did like TGIF, you know, well, that's a common phrase, but I wouldn't then go, oh, that's cool, I'm going to do a design that says TGIF. I would just be like, oh shit, well, that, you know, that brand did it, so I'm not going to really do it anymore. And like, dude, Bosssdog, like we do a design and we'll do text that is like an old 70s saying or something. And then 3 months later, there's fucking 4 brands that have the same exact thing written on their shirts. And I'm just like, man, it's crazy. There used to be like some sort of threshold where it's like you didn't do certain things. And now there's none of that. And it's painful. And like, I see younger designers, like kids that are like 23, they're just doing it. They don't even give a fuck. And it's like, they don't even understand that, like, you know, 10 years ago, man, like, you know, you didn't do that shit. And if you ran into those people, there was going to be words exchanged. Like you just didn't do certain things.
For
but
sure.
yeah, it's not, you know, I'm like griping now, but it is harder and harder to kind of make your own way. And the other thing I will add too, that's making it really difficult is like the trend with licensing and just taking like what Urban Outfitters is doing, and like literally every big retail brand is doing, is like buying like Grateful Dead license, Iron Maiden license, and all they're doing is taking existing old artwork and putting it on everything, like Nirvana or whatever. And that makes it more and more difficult for unique and original brands to get shelf space when they're driving youth culture, and youth culture is just like buying Nirvana ripoff shirts and Grateful Dead ripoff shirts. If you go to like any Foot Locker and Urban Outfitters, it's all Grateful Dead, Urban Outfitters. And like, you know, props to like someone like Killer Acid, who still has a couple of shirts at Urban Outfitters. That's fucking original art by an original artist, you know? You don't see that as much as you were like 4 or 5 years ago. And then when you are seeing it, you're seeing a retail outlet, a company like that's owned by Urban Outfitters saying, you know, it does really well, Killer Acid, we should have art artists do art like that, and you know, whatever. So it does become difficult, you know. And I'm not trying to like scare anyone that's out there, but man, it's a real head fuck. It's crazy.
Seriously.
Well, if you are watching this, we do have an episode on this versus inspiration. So if you're ever questioning your artwork and thinking that it could be too close to somebody else's, you should go ahead and
reference that. I've only been accused of stealing artwork from one big brand, and I won't name the brand, but I had this brand come at me because I used the same wording and the same praying hands, and it was right at the beginning of COVID, and I made a sticker that said, "Wash your fucking hands, please," and it was just, you know, hand soap, praying hands, all that stuff. And someone had commented and tagged this big brand, and this brand came after me, and I was like, one, I posted my graphic before you did. I'm pretty sure I know the designer who did that, and so it's just a coincidence. It's not like praying hands have ever been not done before. But this brand was just commenting on my post, drilling me, telling me that I wasn't gonna be successful in this world of design because I'm gonna rip off everybody. I was like, come on, man. Like, praying hands. Go back to the very first person who ever tattooed praying hands. And God forbid, the one thing that everybody's saying, wash your hands, God forbid I use the same wording as you did.
Right. And that's the thing, is like, it's like that whole thing where it's like originality versus like, I mean, if you're consciously ripping something off, then that's one thing. But there's also such a thing as like shared consciousness, and also like a legacy of fucking like iconography that's like goes back to the 50s and 60s. I mean, it cracks me up when like, you know, like pot humor, like people think that's like fresh. It's like, dude, there's been pot t-shirts and marijuana t-shirts since the 60s and 70s. Like, saying, you know, have a nice trip and shit like that.
Exactly.
Sometimes it's like, you gotta just recognize, it's like, you know, that's where it's like, you have to check yourself, where it's like, dude, we're all kind of drawing on these similar kinds of vibes and ideas. And, you know, there's a difference between consciously stealing a specific thing from someone and then just drawing on the same themes and concepts and stuff. And that's what I was talking about before, where it's like sometimes with designers, if you let it get to you, it can turn you into an asshole. Because I know a lot of designers who walk around thinking that like they like invented the fucking Grim Reaper. And it's like, dude, everyone's been drawing Grim Reapers. I mean, like, you know what I mean?
Sitting
like,
on a Grim Reaper design right now.
Yeah, it's like, dude, we're all drawing mushrooms right now. It's okay. You didn't just start drawing mushrooms 6 months ago and think that you did it. So it's like, be careful. Don't get your ego so crazy that you think that like you're originating this stuff. But
and all that goes to say, like, if you're listening and you want to draw a mushroom right now and you're like, fuck, you can't draw a mushroom anymore. Draw the mushroom. Do the mushroom. If you want to do something, do it. Just make it original.
Yeah. Don't look at Bosssdog's artwork and draw his mushrooms.
Yeah.
I think that's basically what.
And go tag him, and at the bottom put "fuck you, Bosssdog."
But
that's like one thing like I won't do, and I fucking hate it when I see it happen. Is like I won't bully, you know, on like Instagram and stuff. Like I've had people like show me stuff, and they're like, "Call him out," and I'm like, I'm not gonna fucking bully. Like it's so stupid to me. Where it's like.
Because you just look like a douchebag. Like that brand, hey brand, fuck you brand. But I literally put, who shit in your cereal this morning? Like what are you accomplishing by talking shit to a design company that is just starting like on their own? Like you're accomplishing nothing here, you fucking asshole.
Yeah. Also, it's like I'm like I don't know, man. I'm like really old school with like where it's like if you come onto my page and you're gonna talk shit, then like I'm gonna bounce you. You know what I mean? Like at a certain point, it's like this isn't a fucking democracy. I'm not here to give you free speech on my page. So fuck off. You know, like at a certain point, you're out. Like
a very friendly
it's a private club.
I think that we can basically wrap this sort of thing up by really saying that like they can steal your art and they can steal like your designs, but what they can't do is like steal your talent. And hopefully the only thing that you keep going is you try to shake off the flies. And, you know, hopefully stay ahead of the curve, because when it really does come down to it, like hopefully your talent is doing something that is working so well that you have all these flies on you trying to make the same artwork. But at the end of the day, you're the brain behind the mission, and hopefully you're going to stay ahead of everybody else because you're the one doing the work.
Guys. Yeah, I hope that didn't get that went down a dark path. So.
Yeah, it's all good. It happens every once in a while.
I just saw that going into a thing where we could have just like stayed on that for maybe another hour. And it's like
like it would get dark in here. Like, I'd have a candle.
I know, right? So
I'd like to rope this into actually seeing some of his work and put it on the screen if you don't mind, Mikey.
What's up?
I was hoping that we could share some of your work live and kind of talk through the designs and
sure. Yeah.
Is there one that you would want to talk about like in specific, or do we just roll through random?
Man, I mean, shit. We could talk about that's the thing is like they all look the same to me, so it's hard. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But a lot of the more recent stuff I'm doing kind of reflects the fact that like Prisoner of My Own Mind. I mean,
I like that.
Yeah, I mean, that's like I think that was created in the fucking dead of quarantine, so I think it just really reflects exactly what everyone went through the first 6 to 8 weeks of quarantine, where that's kind of how quarantine fell, you know? But yeah, I mean, I think, that's one of those illustrations where I spent probably 90% of my time on that guy hanging out behind the bars. And then the rest of it I did in like 10 minutes. So
I know how that goes.
And then I mean, that was really cool because we worked on that. Sam did that as a split die, and we originally did a split die of that, and then Zumiez picked it up a year and a half later. And it's funny because we did that as a split die, and then after that, some bigger companies did a long sleeve split die, and then we came out with it on Zumiez. And but we did it first. So
Yep, there you go. I love how you let your passion speak through your shirts, because like not a lot of brands have the integrity to kind of like speak what they're passionate about, because they're like afraid of, you know, one side or another. You're very much on the side of love, which I'm very much pro you know, self-love, and you know, I'm very much an ally in those areas that not a lot of people, you know, they wouldn't walk around wearing this, wearing a lot of your stuff. Like transphobia has no place in this world. Like I'd wear the fuck out of this anywhere, no shame whatsoever.
Yeah, and that's a shout out to Bailey from Transfigure. That was a collab with Bailey's company, Transfigure Print Co. And Bailey actually approached me to do a collab, and I was so hyped, like,
yeah,
just because I'm a big fan of his and what they do. So
very cool.
yeah, I think that's the one thing with Bosssdog is like I feel like Sam and I kind of intentionally zigged, or when everyone was zagging. I don't know what the phrase is, but like we kind of were like, how many fucking you know, how many like black t-shirts can you own that say fuck off?
Yeah.
And so we were like, you know, and it's like we don't party anymore, so it's like we just felt like inauthentic making like party t-shirts. And so we were like, we wanted to be political, and we also wanted to be positive, and in a way that wasn't cloying, like wasn't like contrived. Because sometimes it's like I'll make shit that's kind of negative, honestly, but
I just feel like all of your work is so consistent in how like it's got those textures, that those halftones. You have like total uniqueness to your illustrations. You know, your use of colors. Super cool.
A lot of the stuff that I've been writing on a lot lately is like looking at old 60s and 70s and 80s t-shirt illustrations, like stuff for Grateful Dead, stuff for like Blue Oyster Cult, where you look at it and it's like a 5-color silk screen, but it's so stippled and textured that it looks like it, you know, this 3D image, but they did it by hand. Like they literally did it with like a mouse pad, you know what I mean? It's insane. And I kind of love that stuff, that kind of thing, where it's like you figure out how old graphic design was done, and you're like, oh, that's cool, I'm gonna do that, you know?
That is cool. Now, do you use True Grit texture supply?
I don't, but I have some of their texture pens. I just never use them. I do like all my halftones. I do custom, like I'll do the halftones individually per whatever I'm doing a halftone for, or I'll stipple by hand.
That's impressive.
It's insane. I know,
that's
it's insane.
Impressive.
Man, that's 90 hours.
Yeah, that explains why you're spending 60 hours on.
I don't like the uniformity of texture.
I totally get it, because like I put stars in some of my design work, like apparel pieces and stuff, and it's like there's something more eye-catching about stars. Like the piece that we're looking at right now, there's something more eye-catching about like each star being a different size. You know, like my eye will just go straight there, and it looks more spacey and stuff like that. So I totally get it about the, you know, instead of having a pre-programmed brush that does it for you, you know, it does all the stippling for you and whatnot. Like, really cool.
It just depends on how much time you have, you know. It's like, I just kind of zone out. That Seek a Higher Level illustration was for my buddy Dave, has a bar in Brooklyn called St. Vitus, and we did that as a collab. So
is it this one that we're looking at?
The one before that, I think that one's Seek a Higher Level.
Seek a Higher Level. Okay, that's really cool.
Well, the good thing is that I don't think that kid, wherever he is, getting hired by the multi-million-dollar corporation is going to spend 90 hours on the stippling job.
Yeah, no shit.
Okay, honestly, man, like not to take it back there, but that's why I kind of started getting insane with my graphics, because I was like, well, fuck this. I'm going to make each one super complicated to record, because it's the only thing I have anymore. So I'm like, all right, well, Here you go, fuckers. Try this one.
Hell yeah.
Yeah, kill him with talent and kill
Yeah.
him with time, man.
For
Because
sure.
I trip out on, it's like that guy Samborghini that I've done a lot of collabs for. He's another designer who he just does it his own way, and he really spends so much time on each graphic, and
Yeah.
we work a lot together, and it's like, yeah, embrace that shit, like celebrate it, spend some time on stuff. Like I think the biggest thing I did was like break away from like feeling like I had to post every day, and it's just like it takes you 4 days to do a graphic, just do it.
Yeah. I feel
yeah,
that.
there's always one thing where I feel like someone might have, like ripped me off or did something similar or whatever, and then I look at it and it's like worse, right? And then I'm like, oh, that's not that cool. But then like someone goes and takes like inspiration from what I did and it's way better, then I get like fired up to like do better myself, right? But, it's like I always it's the rip-offs that just like do a really poor half-assed job, and like intentionally rip you off, of course. Like there's no place for that here. But again, if you are ever questioning if you're reference versus inspiration, we have an episode about it. So go through.
A quick sum up of that. The answer is no. You don't. You don't copy.
You don't copy.
Yeah.
So I'm wearing this Liquid Death graphic, but how'd you get hooked up with the Liquid Death guys? I'm a huge Liquid Death fan. Like, hey, Liquid Death, sponsor us. But I love the brand. I love their marketing. It's just canned water. But the marketing behind it and the dudes behind it seem like they are the most cool fucking dudes ever.
They are. They're really good. They're such an amazing team. I wouldn't say it if they sucked, I wouldn't chalk trash on them, but I wouldn't be like, they're amazing. So they are. They're really amazing. They're great people. The whole team is really amazing. I don't know. They reached out to me like 3 years ago, honestly. So it took a couple of years of like going back and forth. I think like I'd done a bunch of stuff in like metal kind of worlds for a minute. Like I did some design work for that company owned by Joe Manganiello.
Okay.
I can't remember their name. I think they're called Death, but I can't remember.
Okay.
And then I was working on this movie that Heavy Metal was producing. And so anyways, I was doing more stuff that was like in the metal kind of worlds. And I think they'd see me through that. Oh, I did shit for Zero too. It was either skateboarding or metal.
Okay.
But I did something and caught their eye, and then they asked me, and then a year went by and we didn't talk, and then they hit me up again, and then it took a minute. But they're awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, they just did a movie, a horror movie or something. I can't wait to watch it.
Dude, it's so good.
It's gonna be sweet. Yeah. I forget how so I did work with Tom Segura and Bert Kreischer last year, and they have a podcast called Two Bears, One Cave, and Bert just comes up with like a whole case of Liquid Death, and he was just like slamming them one after another. Then I also do work in the professional wrestling world.
Nice.
And this one guy, he goes by Danhausen, and his whole character is like he's like a medieval kind of demon presence trapped inside like in this time. And so he did this like one Liquid Death ad to where he ripped off Wayne's World, and he's like, canned water. But his whole thing is like a demon Conan. So he goes like, Danhausen loves Liquid Death and shit like that. And so it was a mixture of those two things that I was like, fuck it, I gotta get a case, I gotta try this shit out. And then Lincoln Design Company did all their labeling and logos and stuff. So it was just amalgamation, or whatever that word is. It was all of these things that was like, fuck it, I'm gonna order this shit. And I've been a fan of their brand ever since. I was
great. Super hyped because I don't drink anymore. So I thought like when they hit me up, I was like, oh, you guys probably don't drink. And they're like, no, we drink. I was like, oh shit, whatever. But I just thought it was like, oh fuck, dude, I go through so much soda water, especially like I'm constantly hydrating. So usually I get hit up to do a lot of like stuff for beer and stuff. And that's like I don't drink anymore. So it doesn't like, they'll pay me in beer. And I'm like, great. I don't
what can I do with this
that at all anymore. So
yeah.
when they sent me like a ton of like cases of soda water, and I was so pumped.
I bet.
It was amazing. So
Hell
yeah,
yeah.
it was cool working with them. I didn't know that. I had no idea that the guy that I worked with was originally the creative director from Netflix, which
Really?
I didn't even realize. Yeah,
That makes total sense on their marketing, on how well their marketing is.
their team is amazing. I'm at
Yeah.
that point where it's like I wish I was half as good at social media as them, because
Dude,
they're
same,
incredible. You know.
same. They sold this headband thing that held the cans, and they did a whole infomercial for it, and I was just like, what? Like,
So good.
who the fuck is doing this? Like, anyway.
I saw that.
Yeah, anyway. So something that really stood out about you and what you guys do, you and Sam, is your love for dogs. And I have my French bulldog Herman. He's dead asleep on the couch now.
We did a fundraiser recently because we just got a new dog that was a rescue. We typically just try and do fundraisers in general.
Fundraisers.
For drops. Like last year we were doing a lot of heavy shit, partly because of the climate, and we felt like really self-conscious trying to sell t-shirts in the middle of like when our friends were just going through a bunch of like crazy shit. There was all this social upheaval. So we still try and tie ourselves to political issues when it seems appropriate. Like our last fundraiser was all for transgender like homeless organizations, and so we've always done stuff, but recently we just did it because we were following this organization that like basically it's called Bulldogs Going Home, and it's like these 3 women in Korea who go into meat farms and kill shelters, and they steal or buy all the bulldogs, because apparently, and I don't want to like sound like I'm speaking too generically about it, because I don't know. It's obviously, it's a big country and the whole country's not like this. It's like we're talking about like really poor areas that eat like dogs because they have to. I know that the whole country doesn't dine in on dogs, but there's parts of the country that they do eat dogs, and bulldogs, like pit bulls, but even English bulldogs and even French bulldogs aren't seen as the same kind of dog over there. They're not, they're all seen as aggressive and they're not desirable. So these women, they get them out and then they get them adopted in other parts of Korea. It's not just America that takes them, like other people in Korea take them, but there's not enough resources there. So there's this organization in America that flies them out, and people rescue them here. So anyways, we're huge bulldog fans. Yeah. And it's hard to find bulldog rescues in America that aren't all fucked up psychologically. And what I mean by that is like they can be really aggressive. We already have multiple dogs. So we're getting to the point where it's like introducing a third dog into our family was like, we tried for so long to rescue an English bulldog out here, or just bulldogs in general, or pit bulls, because there's tons of pit bulls in the desert. And we could not find any that got along with our other 2 dogs. Yeah. And Sam and I have like, we've fostered a bunch, like, and we've got a background with like fostering and doing some rescues. So anyways, we just like, we finally found this one dog that we really wanted, and yeah, she worked out perfectly. She's awesome. Great. That's awesome. Her name's Cookie. She's a sweetheart.
There you go.
Before we go, you want to tell everyone where they can find you, and any sort of like
any last words?
Yeah. Last do you have any last words for
yeah, I mean, like, we're Bosssdogart.com, and my wife Sam, my partner, is Bosssdog Art Department on IG, and I'm Bosssdog with 3 S's.
I noticed that today when I was making the graphic. I was like, 3 S's. That's
interesting. You just went on Instagram and looked at who has the 2 S's. Have you not seen it?
They won't answer my DMs.
Oh, so. Really? It's just like this little Asian woman who has 13 followers.
Just hand it over.
It's been around for like a number of years too. I cannot get them to.
Well, all right, man. So they can find you at Bosssdog, and Bosssdog. Is it Bosssdog.com or is it?
It's Bosssdogart.com.
Bosssdogart.com. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
And I see you have a
we're
drop
always-
coming out on July 22nd.
July 22nd, we have a drop. We try and do drops every like month or so, and we do them so we kind of just sell through what we have, and then the site sits quiet for a minute, and then we come back out with new stuff. So it helps us because we're a 2-person company and we're doing all the tie dyeing and all the design work. So we just do things in a really concentrated way. So we have a week where we just do orders and we do the drop, and then we get back to work doing designs and tie dyeing and stuff. And so sometimes people come to us and they're like, your site's empty, and we're like, I know, just wait, there'll be new stuff soon. So
Oh, yeah.
All of those hats, Mikey.
Yeah, I'm
I
gonna.
was just looking on your site ready to buy one, but I couldn't. So let me know the next time.
Yeah,
yeah,
I'll be on that shit too.
hell yeah, thanks so much for having me, you guys.
Dude, thank you for coming on, man. It's been such a pleasure getting to talk. Not so face to face, but getting to talk to you. And like I said, man, I've been such a fan of your work for so long. So it's really cool. You're super down to earth, and we'll have to do this again.
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
Mikey.
Hey, can you guys give me a second? I want to try and take a picture really quick.
Yeah.
Of course.
1 second, I'm gonna probably fuck this up, but
Okay.
okay, we'll see how that turns out. I
It's,
may or may not post that.
it's all good.
I'll
Hey,
do
man,
it.
Mikey, thank you for being a pal, man.
Yeah, thanks you guys, appreciate it.
Thank you for being a pal.
Hey, pals. Thank you for watching another episode of Pen Tool Pals. Really appreciate you being here. Hey, do us a favor. Go subscribe, like, all those things that people say. Smash the like button. And yeah, we also have other videos in our archives. I'm just going to pop up right here and here. Go check those out. And yeah, thanks for being a pal. But let's.
Bosssdog mentioned us in her story.
Yeah!